second part of my journey left the prairie to cross the Great Plains. The transition from prairie to plains started back when I reached the Platte River east of Kearney. Wallace Stegner describes this transition zone as that all but mystical line at which begins another climate, another flora and fauna, another ecology, another light, another palette, another air, another order of being. I'd be riding across the plains for the next 400 miles, from Kearney, Nebraska to Fort Laramie, Wyoming. And I'd be doing it along the Great Platte River Road. Historian Merrill Mattis, one of the founders of OCTA, called it the superhighway of westward expansion. Plains tribes refer to it as the Great Medicine Road for its ability to produce endless waves of emigrants. The thing about the Platte River Road is that while the four major overland trails converged and ran together along the river, there was no single trail per se. There are no wagon ruts to view because wagons, horses, emigrants, and herds all spread out across the valley on both sides of the river. The trail along the Platte was often 5 miles wide, or as much as 12 miles total, including both banks. My first day back on the bike after 2 nights in Kearney felt like cheating. For the first time since Wathena, Kansas, no hills. I passed easily through this stretch, breezing along with relative ease thanks to the quartering wind. Along the way, I passed a memorial at the site of the 1864 Plum Creek Massacre, as well as the cemetery nearby. This attack, carried out by Cheyenne warriors against a freight caravan, was the first action in the August 1864 raids along the Emigrant Trail memorialized back in Oak, Nebraska. Unfortunately, my sweet ride on the Platte River Road was short-lived. I woke at 6 the next morning to a howling north wind, so I set a low goal for the day, only 30 miles from Lexington to Gothenburg, Nebraska. And rather than keep to the Pony Express route, which would mean riding wind-blown gravel roads with due north legs directly into the wind, I powered north into downtown Lexington, then took Highway 30, which runs on the oblique north of west. There's only one thing to do when you have to ride into a strong wind. Stop worrying about it, put your head down, and ride. There's just no other way. I made Cozad in 2 hours. The town sits on the 100th meridian, which in the words of historian Bernard DeVoto is the geographer's symbol of the true beginning of the American West. The Willow Island Pony Express station building sits in the middle of the city park. Cozad wasn't on the Pony Express trail. The local American Legion purchased the building, which was located on the other side of the Platte River, and moved it into the park in 1936. The building was small and squat, built of hand-hewn logs. Looking at it, all I could think was, man, what a lousy place to live. And this was one of the nicer swing stations. Some were constructed of adobe bricks, others of loose stones. A few were little more than holes dug in a hillside. After a quick lunch in town, I fought the wind for another 90 minutes to Gothenburg. Like Cozad, the town had relocated a Pony Express station into the park. The building houses a small Pony Express museum with free admission. In 1992, Gothenburg got the state legislature to designate it as the Pony Express capital of Nebraska. There's even a Pony Express Capitol memorial brick in front of the Gothenburg post office. All this recognition, even though the Pony Express never ran on the Gothenburg side of the Platte River. I stayed at a campground in Lafayette Park on the north edge of town. My first day in the American West ended peacefully. The blustery morning gradually mellowed into a golden summer afternoon. The wind slowly subsided. The leaves on the cottonwood trees quietly fluttered. The grass glowed yellow-green in the slanting afternoon sun. Sure, insects kept biting my legs, but not everything can be perfect. My ride west from Gothenburg followed the original 1913 route of the Lincoln Highway, the main street across America. This stretch of historic highway is known as the Gothenburg Stair Steps, as the original route stair-stepped north and west through this area, following the surveyed land tracks. Back then, Lincoln Highway wasn't a road, but a set of directions from town to town from New York to San Francisco. The trip took 20 to 30 days, and early guides described it as something of a sporting proposition. I guess you could say it was a lot more like bikepacking than driving is now. I enjoyed riding this little piece of highway history. I passed by a few local monuments along the way, including markers for Gilman's and Cottonwood Springs Pony Express stations. 4 days out of Kearney, I camped in North Platte, Nebraska. North Platte is the home of Scout's Rest, Buffalo Bill Cody's ranch. Buffalo Bill is the true father of the Pony Express. Not the real-life 1860 Pony Express, but the storybook version we're all taught to believe. The primary reason we remember the Pony Express as such an icon of the westward movement is that Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, the most popular traveling show of the era, thrilled audiences throughout America and Europe for over 30 years with this exhilarating Pony Express segment. A horseman would gallop down the bandstand, check his pony within one length, and just as quickly, the mailbag would be on another pony galloping off at full speed. It was a showstopper. No one could ever forget it. Buffalo Bill published his autobiography in 1879, just a few years before starting his Wild West show. In that book, he claimed to have been a Pony Express rider and to have made one of the longest Pony Express runs, 322 miles. None of it is true. Buffalo Bill never rode for the Pony Express. The closest he came was to cover a 3-mile radius around Leavenworth, Kansas, as a messenger for Russell, Majors, and Waddell, eventual owners of the Pony Express. Buffalo Bill was 11 or 12 years old at the time. He held that job for 2 months in 1857, 3 years before the Pony Express started. Still, I had to tip my helmet to the old scout as I passed, because even if I didn't know it when I decided I'd attempt this ride, his dreamy-eyed version of the Pony Express had set me on this path. Mid-morning the next day, I arrived at the next landmark of the mid-1800s emigration, O'Fallon's Bluff. The sandhills of the Platte River crowded the river along the stretch, leaving no way for emigrants, freighters, or me to get to the Pacific coast, except by going over them. I was back to miles and miles of climb, descend, repeat, over and over. There was no shade anywhere. The tops of the hills were windy, the bottom stifling hot for the absence of wind, the scenery bland and sere. On southerly legs, when I rode into the teeth of the wind, my pace slowed to a crawl. This was not a great time, and that was before the bugs. I started picking up insects that hitched a ride, then bit me by way of saying thanks, while I struggled up sandy hills, in the heat and the wind. Things went on like this for a while. By mile 40, I was in bad shape, and I still had 25 miles to go. Then, like a beacon of salvation, I saw a gas station sign across Interstate 80, which I'd been riding near all day. The thought of something, anything, ice cold, and preferably enjoyed in a pneumonia-conducive atmosphere, sounded so good. This little store was an oasis of respite, a temporary sanctuary, C-store caravansary. Back out into the heat and wind a half an hour later, I had an unbroken crosswind over an unbroken line of hills for 25 torturous miles to reach Oglala, Nebraska, my stop for the night. Those miles dragged on and on. Talk about tedious. A little geography. The Oregon, California, and Pony Express trails all followed the south bank of the Platte River. Heading west toward California, the Platte River splits into north and south forks just east of North Platte, Nebraska. The South Platte River makes a wide southwest arc from the forks at North Platte to Denver, Colorado. The North Platte River ankles northwest toward Fort Laramie and Casper, Wyoming. South Pass, the only wagon pass through the Rockies along this route, lay west of Casper. So anyone traveling the south bank of the Platte River to a destination on the other side of the Rockies had to cross the river to follow the North Platte toward Casper. Prior to 1859, the most popular crossing, known as the California Crossing, was just west of present-day Brule, Nebraska. After fording the Platte River, travelers had to cross the divide between the forks to reach the North Platte River. The steep climb up to the divide was known as California Hill. The Pony Express route stayed south of the Platte River until Julesburg, Colorado, about 20 miles west. Pony Express station monuments, however, were located on the north side of the river. I wanted to swing by those station sites and also look for swales worn into the earth by wagons on California Hill. So about 12 miles into the ride, I left the Pony Express route to detour north and catch Highway 30 where it passes through Brule, Nebraska. It was well worth the detour. I walked the swales of California Hill, all the while glancing downhill toward the Platte and up to the crest of the hill, imagining a line of white-topped prairie schooners crossing the river, then lumbering up and disappearing over the back of California Hill. It must have been something to see. The reason the Pony Express didn't cross the South Platte at California Hill is that by 1859, the Pikes Peak Gold Rush near Denver, Colorado was in full swing. So in addition to South Pass, travelers along the Great Platte River Road now had a second destination, the Front Range of the Rockies. To grossly simplify the story, William Russell of Russell, Majors, and Waddell was operating a stagecoach and mail line both to Denver and to Salt Lake City. Russell's route superintendent chose Julesburg as a place for the line's split. So rather than cross the divide to Ash Hollow, I continued southwest to Julesburg, Colorado. Julesburg stands apart from most Pony Express stations because the two most maligned people associated with the Pony Express, Jack Slade and Jules Benny, engaged in a violent feud here. The details of the feud are still in dispute. The short version goes like this. Slade was a division superintendent for the Pony Express who had a reputation as the law west of Kearney. Julesburg, a home station on the line, was in his division. Jules Benny, who founded Julesburg, was the station master there. Slade fired Jules for stealing from the company. Jules did not take the news well. In March 1860, just weeks before the Pony Express started its first run, old Jules emptied a pistol and both barrels of his shotgun into Slade at close range. Incredibly, Slade didn't die. His friends ran Jules out of town under penalty of death. Slade eventually healed. A couple of years later, Jules returned from exile and goaded Slade into a fight. Slade tracked Jules down, killed him, cut off his ears, and carried one of them in his vest pocket the rest of his short life. As I said, the details of the whole affair are still in dispute, but that's about as much drama as you get in the entire Pony Express saga. On my way out of Julesburg, I took a few minutes to visit some of the historical monuments by the old town. From there, the road turned north near the historical site of the new California crossing of immigrant days, where Lodgepole Creek met the South Platte River. The Pony Express Trail followed Lodgepole Creek. This part of the road was known as Jules Stretch, after Jules Benny, late of Julesburg. Around 20 miles in, I dropped off a divide and into the Lodgepole Creek Valley town of Chappell, Nebraska. From Chappell, the creek bends from north to west, and the Pony Express trail en route turned with it. Just west of town, the sweetest thing happened. I passed the last building and was swept along for the next 37 miles by a howling tailwind. Along the way, I passed a couple of Pony Express station sites. One of them was Texas Station, a couple of miles off my route near Lodgepole, Nebraska. Just east of Sidney, Nebraska, I came to a marker for the Pole Creek Pony Express Station, also known as French Louis. I stopped at the monument to snap a couple of pictures. When I remounted the bike to go, I found my tires riddled with goat heads. This nasty, invasive plant, also appropriately known as the puncture vine, produces a hard thorn that resembles a COVID molecule, with spikes on every plane. The thorns are like miniature landmines for pneumatic tires. If there was one time in the ride I was glad to have tubeless tires, this was it. I'd still be out there patching tubes. I had originally planned to ride one more day to Bridgeport before laying over, but the next day was the peak of the heat wave, forecast to get over 100 degrees. I decided to lay over in Sidney instead. Unlike the Pony Express riders of yore, I didn't have a schedule to keep.